Well, hello there. So, the book that I've chosen is The Girl Who Hated Books. So, I'm going to read this to you. Once there was a girl called Mina. If you looked her name up in a book, you would find it means fish in ancient Sanskrit. But Mina didn't know that because she never looked anything up anywhere. She hated to read, and she hated books. They're always in the way, she said. And this was true, because in her house books were everywhere, not just on bookshelves and bedside tables where books usually are, but in all sorts of places where books usually aren't. There were books in dressers and drawers and desks and closets and cupboards and chests. There were books on the sofa and books on the stairs, books crammed in the fireplace and stacked on the chairs. And you can see what they mean. Worse still, her parents were always bringing home more books. They kept buying books and borrowing books and ordering books from catalogues. They read at breakfast, lunch and dinner. But when they asked Mina if she wanted to read, she would always stamp her feet and shout, "I hate books!" And when they tried to read out loud to her, she would put her hands over her ears and shout even louder, "I hate books!" There was probably only one person in the world who hated books more than Mina, and that was her cat, Max. A long time ago, when he was just a kitten, an atlas fell on his tail. It bent the tip like a pipe cleaner. Ever since, he tried to stay on top of the books rather than below them. And that's Max, and that's his bent tail. One morning, after Mina moved all the books out of the sink to brush her teeth, she went to the kitchen to get breakfast for herself and Max. First, she climbed onto a stack of encyclopedias so she could reach the cereal. Then she opened the fridge and moved a pile of magazines to get the milk. She poured some for herself and some for Max. "Max," she called, "breakfast is ready." But Max didn't come. She tried again. "Max," she called, "breakfast is ready." He still didn't come. Where could he be, she wondered. She looked in the bathtub, behind the dryer. She looked under the stairs and on top of the clock. She found more books, but she didn't find Max. Suddenly, she heard a loud meow. She ran into the dining room, and there he was, stuck on the top of the tallest stack of books in the house. It was made up of all the books her parents kept buying her, and she kept refusing to read. At the bottom were big shiny books from when she was a baby. In the middle were alphabet books and nursery rhymes, and at the top, right by the ceiling, were fairy tales and adventure stories. They were all covered in dust. "Don't worry, Max," Mina called to him. "I'll rescue you." And she started to climb the pile of books. At first it was easy because the picture books had hard covers, and she felt as if she was climbing stairs. But when she reached the paperbacks, her foot slipped on a book of poetry. She lost her balance and started to slide. It looks pretty precarious, doesn't it? Crash! The books went flying. They fell every which way, the bindings cracking open for the very first time, and the pages flipping apart. As they fell, strange things began to happen. People and animals started falling out of the pages, tumbling to the ground. They dropped one on top of the other, scattering the books and toppling the chairs. There's another story where people come out of books. Do you remember? There were princesses and princes, fairies and frogs, then a wolf and 3 pigs and a troll on a log. Humpty Dumpty went flying and then broke in half behind Mother Goose and a purple giraffe. There were elephants, emperors, emus and elves, and an assortment of monkeys tangled up in themselves, but most of all there were rabbits, falling this way and that. Wild rabbits and white rabbits and rabbits with hats. That's the picture. Can you see the purple giraffe? It's up here. Oh. Mina sat there in the middle of it all, too surprised to move. I thought books were full of words, not rabbits, she said, as 6 more came rolling out of a book beside her. By now she didn't recognise the dining room at all. The elephant was balancing on the coffee table, juggling the good china plates. The monkey had torn down the curtain and was using them as capes, and the rabbits were nibbling on the table legs. The naughty animals. "Stop!" cried Mina. "Go back!" But there was so much barking and grunting and thumping going on that no one heard her speak. She grabbed the nearest rabbit and tried to stuff him into a cookbook, but that scared him so much he wriggled out of Mina's grasp and ran away. She opened another book, and 4 ducks flew out. She slammed it shut again. "This won't work," said Mina. "I don't know who goes in which book." She thought for a moment. "I know. I'll go to everyone and ask them where they belong." She started with one strange creature she didn't recognise at all. "Who are you?" she said. "A is for aardvark," the animal said angrily, and stomped off in search of her alphabet book. She found a wolf sobbing under the dining table because he didn't, and she asked him where he belonged. "I can't remember if I'm from Little Red Riding Hood or the 3 Little Pigs," he wailed and blew his nose on the tablecloth. But Mina couldn't help him because she'd not read either story. Then she had an idea. She picked up the nearest book and began to read aloud. "Once upon a time," Megan began, in a land far, far away." There's the poor little wolfie. Slowly the creatures stopped jumping and howling and gibbering and chattering. They crept closer and closer to hear what happened next. Soon they were all sitting in a circle around her, listening to her read. When Mina reached the top of the second page, the pigs in the circle jumped up. "That's us!" they cried. "That's our page! That's our book!" And they leapt up out of the circle and dove into her lap and disappeared into the book. Mina clapped it shut before they could pop out again. She grabbed another story. One by one she began reading all her books, and one by one the creatures found out where they belonged. At last, oh, that's a good picture. Everyone looks very contented. At last there was just one little rabbit in a little blue coat left in the room. Mina slowly picked up a book. It was the tale of Peter Rabbit. "Maybe I could just keep this rabbit with me," she thought. She was beginning to feel lonely now everyone else had gone. But the little rabbit stood in front of her, shifting nervously from foot to foot and twitching his fuzzy nose. He was anxious to get back home. So, with a big sigh, Mina opened the last book. The rabbit hopped in, and with a flash of his white cotton tail, he was gone. The house was quiet. Max sat on some books washing his face. Mina sighed. "I'll never see those rabbits again," she said. Then she noticed that the books were still there, lying around her, and she started to smile. That's Mina and the little rabbit. When her parents came in that afternoon, they couldn't believe their eyes. Not because the curtains were gone and the dishes were broken and the table legs were chewed up, but because there, sitting in the middle of the room, was Mina, and she was reading a book. Can you see that picture? The light's gone funny. All right, So that is a story. And I will see you, hopefully I'll see you next week at 2 o'clock. Bye.